We are into the stretch run, fellas. Only 2 more weeks until the fantasy football playoffs. So today we're coming at you guys with week 13 waiver wire pickups, guys, that you need to add to bolster your fantasy football teams for the stretch run or stash for the fantasy playoffs when things really matter. So we're not going to waste any more time. Let's get right into it. All right, so to kick things off, these are the guys that just missed the cut of my top 10 waiver ads. The reason I didn't include them is because they are rostered in more than 40% of Sleeper, ESPN, and Yahoo leagues combined. So if you guys are in a shallower league, maybe leave some comments down below if you have decision points between any of these guys. But Jaden Reed, Chuba Hubbard, Josh Downs, Keaton Mitchell, Ezekiel Elliott, Pat Freiermuth, and Demario Douglas would all be top 2 to 3 ads for me if they were available in your league. But given their current rostership, I'm assuming they are probably not if you guys play in regular 12-man leagues with 5 bench spots. But if you're in a 10-man league or an 8-man league or something like that, definitely leave any of those comments down below. So let's get things kicked off with the top 10 waiver ads. Number 10, going from descending order here, we're going to kick it off with Jalin Hyatt, wide receiver of the New York Giants. He is one of the low-end stashes that I think is available right now. He is on bye this week, but he did just record his first 100-yard game of his NFL career. Maybe he'll be a recipient of the post-bye rookie bump that we tend to see with rookie wide receivers and rookie running backs. So I can't imagine you'll be overly excited to start a New York Giants wide receiver with Tommy DeVito as his quarterback, but I do think he's worth a stash if you guys are rostering, say, Robert Woods or Devontae Parker, some random no-name wide receiver that you're never going to use. You might as well just throw Jalin Hyatt on your bench and see what happens for the next couple of weeks. Not a great ad, but that's why he's my number 10. My number 9 ad on the week here is Greg Dortch, wide receiver of the Arizona Cardinals. And if Michael Wilson is back, I would say Greg Dortch is no longer a top 10 ad for me, and I will talk about Michael Wilson here in a second. But if Dortch is, again, a starting wide receiver for the Cardinals and Michael Wilson's again out with the shoulder injury he's been dealing with, you could actually pick up Greg Dortch and throw him right into your flex spot because we have 6 teams on bye in week 13. It's a very crucial week for a lot of you guys. I'm sure you're looking to clinch a playoff spot. You're looking to clinch a bye. Whatever the case is, you're going to have to dig deeper this week for your start sits and for your flex options. And Greg Dortch has run 80% plus of the Cardinals' routes in the last 2 games that Michael Wilson has been out for. And he's seen at least a 20% target share in those 2 games with 14 PPR points 2 weeks ago and 12 PPR points this past week. So he's not a horrible option if you just need somebody right off the waiver wire to throw right into your lineup. So number 8 on this list is more in the stash vein. This is not a guy that you're going to want to play this week. This is somebody that you're going to want to stash for the fantasy playoffs. And I will actually drop a video either today, tomorrow, or Thursday about my favorite stashes for the fantasy playoffs, kind of ranking the back end running back handcuffs and all that kind of stuff. I did that video last year and 2 years ago, and you guys really seem to like that. So Kenneth Gainwell is my number 8 ad on the week here, 25% rostered. I talk about Gainwell nearly every week, so I'm pretty sure you guys know the case by now. DeAndre Swift has struggled to stay healthy over the course of his career, and the Eagles are a 10-1 football team with a top-level offense. So if Swift ever went down, Kenneth Gainwell should be a RB2 at the very least. Maybe Penny mixes in, maybe Boston Scott mixes in, whatever the case is. I do think Gainwell would at least be the primary back of this offense and be valuable to some degree. So if you have Kenneth Gainwell on your bench right now, just hold him, see what happens. Maybe nothing ever does, but he's basically burning a bench spot and holding an upside option, because if week 16 rolls around and, DeAndre Swift misses a game or something like that, this could be a guy that you could throw right into your flex option during the championship semifinals or something like that. So definitely hold Kenneth Gainwell if you guys have an open spot. Samaje Perine is my number 7 ad. Again, also more of a handcuff type of stash here. He does have 14 PPR points in back-to-back games, and Javonte Williams is still the primary back here. He's actually outsnapped Samaje Perine 71% to 26% over the past 2 games. But if anything happens to Javonte Williams, as we saw back in week 5 when Javonte missed a game, Samaje Perine played the majority of snaps in that game. 63% of the snaps, got the majority of the carries, most of the long down and distance and 2-minute drill work. Jaleel McLaughlin was involved, but he wasn't really the primary guy, making Samaje Perine a decent handcuff to stash down the stretch, knowing that the Broncos are actually playing much better and they're winning games and they're on a huge win streak right now. So Samaje Perine becomes a little bit more intriguing with the Broncos actually in positive game scripts. So my number 6 ad on the week here is Michael Wilson, who I already kind of touched on a little bit. He has been dealing with a shoulder injury, and this is kind of just an upside swing right now, but he has missed the last 2 games, and we haven't seen him on the field with Kyler Murray. But with Kyler Murray, we've seen him push the ball down downfield way more than Josh Dobbs was early on in the season, about a 10 average depth of target versus 8. Michael Wilson is the largest average depth of target wide receiver on the Cardinals offense. He has an over a 14 average depth of target on the season, so he may become the better downfield option for this Cardinals offense with Kyler Murray back on the field. It's not a great week for waivers overall, so a guy like Michael Wilson presents a good stash and some of the best ads that we can really hope for. So if you guys are in need of some wide receiver depth, I think that Michael Wilson could both be used potentially this week as a desperation option and make for a good stash down the stretch as well. So now we get into my top 5. My number 5 waiver ad on the week is Ernest Johnson, running back of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Travis Etienne left briefly during Sunday's game, and he has also seen his snap share decline in recent weeks from 59% this past week, 65% 2 weeks ago, and 63% 3 weeks ago. Typically, we'd seen Travis Etienne in the 75-80% snap share range. Tank Bigsby has played barely any snaps the last couple games, played a season-low 3% of the snaps this past week. He's averaging like 3.2 yards per carry on the season. It's clear that he's not going to be the primary backup here in Jacksonville anymore. The Jaguars have pivoted to Ernest Johnson, and it seems that he is the primary backup now for Travis Etienne. Of course, we've seen Ernest Johnson in a handcuff role back when he was with Cleveland. Anytime Nick Chubb was out, he was a very valuable option. He can catch the ball. He's a goal line guy. He can get a lot of carries. This is a good offense that runs the ball in the red zone a lot. So if Travis Etienne, who seems to be a little bit banged up with an upper body injury, ever were to miss any time, Ernest Johnson, who played 43% of the snaps this past week, makes for a very good handcuff upside playoff stash that you guys can put at the end of your bench and just kind of hope that you eventually get to use him. So number 4 on this list is Jonathan Mingo, who right now is rostered in only 16% of leagues. I'm not really excited for Jonathan Mingo because given the lack of target competition there in Carolina, in an offense that is so desperate for wide receiver talent to step up, Jonathan Mingo should have been fantasy relevant a long time ago, but he was a raw rookie wide receiver coming out of Ole Miss. He had a lot of, work to do on his game. Maybe he's starting to find his NFL sea legs here, and he has 6+ targets in 3 straight games, 60 yards on 4 catches this past week. The Bucs are the Panthers' next opponent, and if you guys are desperate this week, I think you could do worse than throwing Jonathan Mingo into your lineup. And similar to Michael Wilson, I think he's also a pretty decent stash for the stretch run of the fantasy playoffs. And now with Frank Reich gone, maybe we see an uptick in Bryce Young's passing production in this offense's overall efficiency, because I don't think Frank Reich was doing them any favors. And sometimes we see when a coach gets fired, as we've seen in Las Vegas, the offense starts to play a little bit better. So number 3 on this list is Tucker Kraft. And if you guys are in need of a tight end, I think this is one of the better ads that you can get, assuming Pat Freiermuth is rostered in your league. You guys would know if you were following along this Dynasty offseason how much I love Tucker Kraft. I loved him so much, in fact, that I had him graded in the same tier of talent as Sam Laporta, and I had him graded higher than his teammate, Luke Musgrave, who went in the 2nd round, as opposed to Tucker Kraft, who was taken in round 3, both by the Green Bay Packers. Luke Musgrave is out for the season, or at least out for the next 4 games, with an abdomen injury, and it took all but 1 game for Tucker Kraft to post a higher PFF receiving grade of 75 than Luke Musgrave has posted the entire season. He had 88% route participation as well, clearly operating as this team's tight end 1. 88%, by the way, also higher than Luke Musgrave has ever posted this entire season. With Musgrave out on IR for the rest of the year, I believe we have like another Mark Andrews, Hayden Hurst type of situation where the better prospect slipped in the draft, the worst prospect went first, but the better prospect's talent wins out in the long run. That's more of a dynasty take, but in the meantime, I think he's a great streaming tight end option at the very least. So if you need a tight end this week, if you have Dalton Kincaid on bye, if you have, tight end X on bye this week, I think that Tucker Kraft makes a good option for you guys to pick up right off of the waiver wire. So my number 2 ad on the week, and this guy would probably be my number 1 ad if you guys needed a desperation flex play. Curtis Samuel right now of the Washington Commanders, rostered in 39% of leagues, so he is not widely available, but if you guys do have him on your wire, I think he makes for a good option. With 6 teams on bye, like I said, a lot of you guys are going to have to dig deeper for players to put into your lineup to make sure that you make the fantasy playoffs or that you push towards that bye week that you've been going towards. Samuel is coming off of his best game of the season with 19 PPR points in week 12 against the Cowboys. He was injured for a lot of, late October or mid-November type of area, but before that, in weeks 1 to 6, he was giving you flex production with a number of games with, 18 PPR points, 14 PPR points. The Commanders face the Dolphins this week, so if you need a 1-week bye-week filler, I do think Curtis Samuel is the best option out there with a defense that ranks 24th against fantasy wide receivers. Sam Howell, of course, is slinging the rock all over the place, And we know the Miami Dolphins are going to put up points on the Washington defense, who just fired their defensive coordinator. So with Curtis Samuel, I think you can count on another 6 to 8 targets this game. If you need a production piece because you have a bunch of guys on bye, I think Curtis Samuel is the premier guy to go out and pick up. And then finally, my number one waiver ad on the week. This is definitely for those of you guys that have maybe already secured a playoff spot, or maybe you're in position to have a playoff spot, or you've already secured a bye or whatever. You have at least probably 7 or 8 wins. This is the number one guy to pick up if you're in this position. The number one guy, if you're not in that position, if you're pushing for a playoff spot or whatever, or if you have a lot of bye weeks this week, would be Curtis Samuel. But my number one waiver wire pickup, if you guys are in a great playoff position, is Roschon Johnson. Right now, he's rostered in 32% of leagues, and I would say if you have any fab budget left, I would drop whatever you have left on either Curtis Samuel or Roschon Johnson, depending on your team situation. Roschon Johnson is on bye in week 13. So not a guy that you can actually use this week, but Johnson took over this backfield on Monday night. If you guys weren't paying attention because it was an absolute snooze fest of a game, the one big fantasy takeaway from Bears and Vikings was that Roschon Johnson outsnapped Khalil Herbert 50-15, and he got the majority of routes 21-7 over Khalil Herbert. He had 4 targets, 11 carries to Khalil Herbert's 6. So legitimately took over this backfield. Now, there's a lot up in the air because Deontay Foreman was actually out with an ankle injury, and knowing that they have a bye week, maybe he's going to be back. But at the same time, when a rookie running back showcases that, I just took over the backfield type of usage, generally that trend continues, especially when they have a bye week coming up and they can give him that post-bye rookie bump like I talked about with Jalin Hyatt. He has the Lions and the Browns after the bye, which is 2 tough matchups, but assuming we see the usage correct itself and we see that Roschon Johnson is the starting running back for this offense going forward, he could actually be a league winner down the stretch, because Arizona and Atlanta are the 2 matchups that he has in week 16 and week 17. At the very least, if you guys have a really good roster and you're well set up for the fantasy playoffs and you have, let's say, one option on your bench that's not really relevant anymore after bye weeks are over, just pick up Roschon Johnson as a speculative ad. Maybe you never use him, but I do think he has the talent. I loved him coming out of Texas. He was my RB5 in the class. I think he could do it on all 3 downs. If we see him take over this backfield down the stretch, he could legitimately win people leagues. So definitely make sure that Roschon Johnson is on your roster if he is available. Whatever you have left, fab budget-wise, $20, $30, $40, I would drop it all on Roschon Johnson, because the waiver wire is getting pretty slim at this point. I don't think you need to be saving your budget for anything else. This is the best available waiver ad that we're going to see for the rest of the season, unless we see a major injury happen. So definitely be sure to pick up Roschon Johnson. Again, if you enjoyed this video, if you got some value from it, leave a like down below. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new around here. If you want to check out everything that we're doing, our bonus content is over on flockfantasy.com. Use promo code FSE for 30% off any of the packages. If you sign up annually, you can get a free Zoom consultation with myself or with Danny. We have a brand new Dynasty and Redraft trade calculator right now. If you guys want to check that out, that is available over there. Dynasty rankings up to date. Redraft rankings, rest of season up to date. Weekly rankings, manifesto, definitely a great resource for you guys during the fantasy playoffs to help set your lineups. Everything available on Flock Fantasy. So that will be available down below in the description. Also get access to all the bonus content of all your favorite fantasy football creators that you guys can see on the screen there. But with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.